Let's work. Yo, it's go time, showtime, never backing down time. One shot, yo, make it count, yo. Crunch time, shine time, make this moment my time. Get a grip, yo, ready, set, go. We bring the thunder. Bring the thunder. Let's work. Bring the thunder. Let's go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spot Real Talk. My name is Tiara.
I'm LaWanda.
I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Ron.
And today we are back to discuss Ozark's last 4 episodes. This is it. So we are going to do 11, 12, 13, and 14. And we are so excited to get started because this last season has been phenomenal. So congratulations to the entire cast, the crew, everybody involved. And we are just like jumping in our seats ready to get started to talk about this. So if you guys hang tight, we'll be right back. Everyone, like I said, we are talking Ozark, the final 4 episodes today. Wow is all I can say. And round of applause. I mean, they killed it.
They brought it. Literally. They brought it. They did not Game of Thrones us.
Right. But you know what? It's going to be so hard to talk about these previous episodes leading up to the finale. So you guys make sure you hang in there with us because we're going to get to the good stuff, but we definitely got to talk about what led up to that finale. So we're talking episode 10. I'm sorry,
11.
11, my fault.
11.
So 11 was titled Pound of Flesh and Still Kickin'. And so this whole episode was pretty much where Marty is coming back from Mexico and he's feeling guilt about killing Arturo when he knows that really he realizes that Camilla is behind it. And so he's kind of talking to Wendy and she's trying to, I guess, comfort him and let him know that it's okay because he was acting on Navarro's behalf, and that's what Omar would have done. So we know Marty is not the kind of guy that can live with something like that. He's the righteous kind, and he has avoided deaths pretty much a lot of times in this show. At least doing it himself. So, that's weighing on him. And of course, with Wendy on the side of her foundation, Randall is pissed off because they're screwing up the board's money. And he has also found out that somebody has been back channeling to keep Omar on the SDN list. And so that's kind of like how Marty figured out, like, oh, this is Camilla.
This is Camilla, yeah.
Yeah,
I told y'all in the last recap, I was like, I thought that she was involved.
Yeah,
but much more diabolical though than they really set it off on her to be. I mean, yeah, I remember you said that Camilla might be the one, and I had some doubt, but I guess it turned out right.
I knew it was her.
I'm just saying though. I could understand Camilla wanting to kill the man because he supposedly killed her son. But Camilla showed me, I mean, she leveled up 3-4 levels. I mean,
she wants to run. Oh. She wants to run the organization.
And I didn't, okay, I'm gonna admit, I was a little clueless with that. I have to admit that. I just thought it was a point of passion, and that's what it was. Listen, but it was much more than that.
Listen, let me tell you, when women
don't tell me. I know. I already know.
And I'm not even talking about just the revenge part. I'm just talking about when women become the villain.
The strategic planning.
Yeah, they lean into that. Like,
okay. So this is the episode too that pissed me off because of Wendy. Wendy drove me nuts this episode because it seemed like every time she was just making decisions on her own.
Yes.
And it was like, no, I guess she was trying to be considerate of Marty, but he didn't
No.
appreciate it at all.
No,
She was emasculating him. Like I said in the previous recaps. I mean, she is constantly emasculating him, which is what led to his meltdown at the end.
Right. And so it started with Omar getting out of the coma, and he survived, so that was good for them. But then the lady from the FBI calls and says that Omar wants to visit, of course, and then she also basically talks to Marty about giving up the next shipment. So she does get that information from him, but she also drops that little note where she said, if Omar doesn't recover, you could be like his permanent stand-in. And Marty's like, no, he's gonna recover. He'll be all right.
Right.
Yeah, because I know he don't want that stress in his life.
He's trying to get out.
But you know what I loved about Marty is his acumen for the books, because I don't care what kind of cartel member you are. If you got somebody that can keep your books together and keep you on the straight and narrow, like Marty was doing, you gotta respect that. You got to respect that.
But bringing this back to Camilla, because this is where Marty's like, okay, Omar's awake. Let's tell him about her right now. And Wendy, like, this is the first thing that she ticked me off about. She's like, no, we can wait. We can use that later on, And I'm like, Wendy, like, she was driving. So that was the first thing that kind of pissed me off with her, because she wants to keep the control. And, and then when they go to visit Omar, she volunteers for Camilla to step in for Marty and be his stand-in in Mexico, which Marty is kind of like just going with the flow. But after the fact, I mean, he was livid. You could see it all in his face. He was so irritated with Wendy. And he was straight up giving her the silent treatment, turning the radio up in the traffic.
He has these passive aggressive tendencies.
He does.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah. And so like I was like, Wendy is so shady for doing that to him like that. Because Marty was saying, like, if Camilla is already making these moves on his life, and then she's also basically like in the meeting, she was talking about like increasing the money laundering so that she could pay the his crew. And Marty's like, well, I think she's trying to buy their loyalty. So why would we put her in further position to wipe us out? Like, if she's there, he doesn't need us. And, Wendy didn't seem to see it that way. She's like, no, we can still control Camilla. She trusts us. So,
no, Wendy.
No, she doesn't.
No. To use Ruth's saying, Wendy's playing Candyland and Camilla is playing chess.
yeah.
She was like over there drinking her wine and kikiing with Wendy, but she was doing stuff on the back end, letting her lawyers look into the situation with the SDN and all that stuff. So Wendy always thinks she's smarter than everybody.
She thinks she has a better business mind than Marty. So for every step Marty took business-wise, she had to show Marty that what she thought was much better, and that's why I said earlier, I wish I just wanted one episode where Marty smacks the you-know-what out of her. Because I'm sorry.
Well, that's why he got in a fight, because he can't hit his wife and hit a woman, period.
Yeah,
that's why he wailed on the man the way he did.
And she knew it too.
And she knew it.
She knew it.
Somebody that diabolical to me ain't no woman. I just see you as another animal altogether. But
Every decision she made me nervous, because I was like, she's gonna get him killed, and he kept looking at her like, are you trying to get me killed?
Right.
Allowing her to do that though, it's something in Marty that is so pure with this relationship with his wife that it's detrimental to him.
It is. And he loves her unconditionally. He talked about that at one point when he talked about unconditional love. But she was a trip, and I agree that she was.
And I was glad Marty finally got to release. Like, he's been holding that in for a lot, like all 4 of these seasons. We've been seeing Marty hold it in and be composed and keep it together. But once he unleashed, he went ham.
Yeah, he did.
I was like, I'm glad he finally got to get it out. And he even told the dude, like, I'll make one call right now and get you killed. I was like, oh, Marty is going on.
It was like, even Wendy, even then she was trying to step in the fight. She was just like, hey, you know. So that's why he was like, no, like, you stay out of it. You won't talk to my wife like that. And he stepped up. And I think in her mind, I think she had a little more respect for Marty too.
Yeah.
After he did that.
I think so too.
I think she had a little more fear of Marty, because I think she saw if he snaps, it's done. You know, there's no return.
All of that, but she still kept making decisions. It didn't change her behavior one bit.
That's true. That's true.
No. I like the conversation that Marty had with Charlotte when he was kind of venting to her. And he was kind of like, you know, she's driving us off a cliff. He was like, I tried. He was like, basically everything I do, nothing seems good enough for her. And so he's like, when it comes back to it, everything is always on me. Like, it's my fault. And so I was like, I felt Marty on that.
I felt him too. I felt him.
Charlotte's like, well, why don't you guys go to the therapist? And he's like, yeah, she's not an option.
She's not an option. Look, she's been retired. And Charlotte was looking like, oh.
That was just a reminder how many people have died behind them.
Yes.
Right.
Innocent people.
Yes.
Right.
And to make matters worse, Wendy has straight up invited Camilla in town. She's sitting in their living room when Marty walked in the house.
The wine. That's what I'm saying. He came with the wine and stuff, and just she like ambushed Marty, because when he came home, Camilla is in their home with the wine.
And
Look, we have a threat, but invite the threat in. Introduce the children.
But she straight up did Clare dirty too when she rolled up with Camilla, and she strong-armed that deal.
Yeah, she sure did. Because she knew Clare was not going to turn Camilla away.
Well,
right. So I can appreciate some of her antics.
I started to say, I can appreciate that. I mean, in a lot of instances, Wendy shows that she has what it takes to get things done.
He was a political operative in Chicago. Chicago politicians are tough.
Oh, they're ruthless. And Wendy is all that in a bag of chips. I mean, she is quite ruthless. And, you know, to be in her position, or to, you know, to run a cartel, or to be in with a cartel, you have to be, I would imagine. But, you know, so she really showed herself in that regard. As I said before, if she would just meet Marty halfway, they could really do some damage, you know, but for every time Marty turns right, she turns left.
Yeah, and Marty kept trying to warn her, like when this Camilla situation, he was like, we cannot trust her. We cannot trust her. Lo and behold, the trucks that, you know, he was supposed to have given for the FBI to seize, they turned up empty. And he's like, Camilla did this. But, you know, when he was talking to the woman, he played it off well. And he was like, I have to make sure that the cartel still trusts me. So let me do my job. And I was like, okay, Marty showed some finesse in that situation.
Yeah, he did.
Knows how to maneuver too. So
but if he didn't do it, that was a very smart thing to do. Or I should say, if he did do it, it was a smart thing to do, because he does have to look, FBI, I know you want what you want, but until I can be in position to be trusted, you got to let me do some things that you may not like, you know. So come on, you can't have it both ways, you know. So I thought he might have had a hand in that, but if he didn't, you know. No,
he did. He said he did. He had the conversation with Wendy and said, when he warned Wendy, he was like, Camilla did this, and he said, I covered with Clare, the FBI girl, but Camilla did it behind his back.
Yeah, that was a smooth. That was as smooth an operation as.
Yeah, he did. He just thinks on his feet.
Oh, yeah, miles and miles ahead of everybody else.
Yeah. So the other big part of this episode was Ruth. She flies to Miami, and we see a familiar face, a blast from the past. It's Rachel from the Blue Cat. And so they get back into this deal where Ruth convinces her to come back to the Ozarks and basically help her to take over the casino. And she, you know, Rachel helps her maneuver and figure out, like, if Wyatt, you were technically his legal guardian, then you should have some stake to his assets if he had a will. They figure out that he did, and since he was married to Darlene, she can still get Darlene's half of the stuff too. So I was like, Ruth
The
is about
stake
to
in
clean
the
up.
Missouri Belle. Yeah, in the
Not
casino.
only that Bell, but all the assets.
All the assets.
Yeah, so they bring on Charles Wilkes, who had previously helped Wendy, and he is on this campaign to help Ruth get some payback against the birds. So he was like, look, I'll give you my majority stake and I'll help you get your record clean. So he hooks her up with this judge who is exactly that, very judgmental. But I was surprised by that because I like how this show brings you, we talked about this offline, but bringing things back full circle. And so it was good to see Rachel come back into the storyline.
Seeing the original cast.
Yeah, they did her dirty. So I was like, maybe this is her chance to get some redemption. So that's pretty much, well, outside of that portion, there's a lot developing with the Ben situation. Mel is showing up to question Ruth, and he's questioning a lot of people. Grandpa is also digging around, and he basically talks to Wendy. Mel and Grandpa show up and confront Wendy with the pictures and everything in hand. And so Wendy is able to kind of play it off and say that Ben and her got in an argument and he flew away somewhere because he might not want to be found.
Wendy lies with ease, boy. Wendy lies with ease. I was like, she's really deft with the lies.
Yeah, and pretty much by the end of the episode, Mel and Maya are working together again, and they are able to uncover the photo of Nelson at the restaurant. And Maya's like, stay away from this one. Like, look, I already uprooted my life and moved away fooling with these people in the cartel. She's like, I'm not doing it again. Leave that alone. And she's like, plus you don't even work for the FBI, so you have no vested interest here. Leave it alone.
But she did tell him, like, listen, you know, they blackballed me and I'm on the desk, but they can't do that to you. So she was still kind of trying to help him.
Yeah. Well, he should have took her advice. But we know that's Mel. Right. So going into episode 12 called Trouble in the Water, the kids are bailing their parents out of jail after the big street traffic brawl.
That was hilarious.
It was.
Yes,
but I mean, it doesn't help. Like you always say, you know, it doesn't help when the family feuds. Nobody wins. And so he keeps, Wendy and Marty are still giving Marty's giving her the silent treatment. And he's trying to tell her, like, it's not sustainable to keep funneling information to the FBI under Camilla's nose. And Wendy still, she is dead set on not telling Omar about Camilla still. So she ends up getting their charges dropped. Thank goodness. And she also had this conversation with Marty where I think you alluded to this earlier, Tiff, but she says, you know, I know it's not easy to love me. And when this is all said and done, like, if you want to leave, I understand, but I don't really want you to leave.
And she was just repeating what her father told her. Like when she was having that conversation with her dad was like, you aren't easy to love, which is a terrible thing for a parent to say to their child, and which explains a lot about Wendy.
Yeah.
Well, truth be told, she's not easy to even like, much less love.
I know, but there's the reason. A lot of times when people are a certain way and you start looking at their environment, you know, their childhood, all that stuff it's a factor. I mean, separate show, power, whatever. When we saw Tommy's mom, and then we saw Tony Teresi, we knew why Tommy was the way he was. Yeah. And the same thing with Wendy, like seeing, I don't know how her mom was, but seeing the dad, knowing how he truly is, like he's presenting to be this religious man and everything and stuff, but how he really is. Yeah. I said, now I see why Wendy is the way she is.
So episode 11, we saw Marty go crazy. Episode 12, we saw Wendy go crazy. This episode was really all about her and her dad. And, you know, he really is going out of his way to get those kids. And so he does her dirty. You know, it's kind of odd to see a father and daughter at odds like that, and to see that he would do something so conniving and like just hateful to hurt her.
Yeah, hurt her. He didn't even really want the kids for real.
Well,
which we figured out.
Yeah, he's a full-time alcoholic who pretends to be a priest or a minister or whatever he is. And, you know, it's a double-edged sword in that house, I guess, for Wendy. Because, you know, as a young girl, you want to believe in your father, you want to love him. But I'm sure they took some hellacious beatings from him, particularly when he was drunk. So yeah, I fully get why she is the way she is. And I don't want to jump the gun here, but when she said there were certain things she could do to him, I hollered.
Well, I really felt compassion for Wendy for once in this episode
too.
Because to see her begging and pleading, because we know how the court case turned out, you know,
Right.
They went through all of that trouble to try to get Mel back on the police force and to get him sent off to Chicago so he wouldn't be able to testify in court. And the judge still was like, no, I know y'all history. Like, these kids don't need to be with you, but they're old enough to make their own decision. And so they decided that they were going to go to Grandpa, and she like pleaded and screamed and hollered on her knees, made a whole circle. And I was like, wow, like,
yeah, she was broken. She was broken, and I did feel for her then.
It's hard for me to go there because it's still a lesser of two evils. Yeah, the father was trash, but Wendy is, you know, they got these kids involved in cartels.
They both trash. They both trash.
Kids don't really know though. The kids don't have context.
No,
Yeah.
right.
The kids don't have context, but at the same time, okay, all of that, you still have these kids involved in a cartel. Jonah is not living there. Charlotte is about to age out. Nothing the judge said was incorrect.
The judge was right.
Regardless of how we feel about Wendy, and we can, you know, see how she got there with her past. They still horrible parents.
No, they are horrible parents. And
The
he's
kids
a horrible
needed another option.
They
They need another option besides the trash grandfather.
What the fact remains, at least Charlotte, who's going to be 18, is an adult and stuff, and she could go to school. Even if Jonah wanted to live with her, you know, he could do that.
Living on his own.
Yeah, he has been. He has been. But now, you know.
I think the other thing they could have done, since Charlotte was turning 18, or
She's turning 18.
Right. You know, once she turned 18, she could have taken her brother away from the granddad. I agree with Alana.
That's what I said.
I agree with Alana in the sense that, you know, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. You know, you might have been slightly better off with the grandfather, because there's nothing like the cartel breathing down your parents' back and wanting to kill them. As we know, they're going to kill you and the parents as well if it came to that. So structurally, I think it would have been a better idea to go with the father.
At first, I thought that until I saw him, and not saying that I listen. I'm not excusing Wendy for any of the stuff that she's done. Wendy is trash. Wendy is trash. The grandfather, I'm just saying, like, you know, Charlotte is 18, Jonah 15, still a minor. Those formative years or whatever, still, I mean, being under that household, just the possibility of them being subjected to beatings or whatever that Wendy and Ben received too. You know, like even Ben in his final moments with Nelson, he said Wendy is the only one that she protected me, the only one who loved me and stuff. And just the thought of, like, Wendy was saying to Marty, she was like, you know, I will kill him before I let my kids go to that house. Yeah. So for her to be saying that, we don't know what Wendy and them experienced. Yeah. And she said that the mom, you know, he cheated and he beat the mom and he beat them. So the thought of, you know, speaking of a parent, I wouldn't want my kids to be involved in no cartel,
Mhm.
but I would not want my child to go to a household where he could possibly be beaten.
Yeah. Which
Yes.
is
Well,
why
you
the
know.
judge gave them the options that they were old enough to choose.
True.
That, you know, the third option is let's figure this out on our own.
And remember,
Exactly.
Jonah has bank, and I guess
Yeah.
Charlotte does too. So they really didn't have to go with the grandfather at all. And
Listen,
but
he was the one that bailed him out. That's why she went and got Jonah.
yeah, I know, but also understand Wendy has separation issues. Even when Jonah left, you know, she was acting a fool. So, you know, I think that part of what we saw with her father was just that, those separation issues. I don't know how much, you know, I don't know how much it involved the man himself as much as Wendy just having this, I don't know.
She said it when she confronted him in the room. She said, "Mom told me." She was like, "You know, you think you forgot about the beating?" She was like, "Mom told me about the lie." She said, I was there, you know.
Oh, what? Charlotte ain't gonna take no beat. I'm telling you, the moment he hit Charlotte, I think Charlotte would have been a thief in the night, out of there like.
But you know, you could
Now you
tell
see
the
me, now you
father
don't.
he was fueled by what Mel had told him, because Mel was like, this guy Nelson, he probably killed Ben. He is part of the cartel. So the father has like at least some knowledge that Ben is probably dead. And
Right.
so the fact that Ben died, like that was like the vengeful attitude that he put on to Wendy. That like that was his driving force in getting those kids. And so I was wondering, like, even though they did decide to go with him, if he wouldn't have still been taking it out on them, because
Right.
of course you mentioned how abusive and alcoholic he is. And so I just think that he plays nice in front of Jonah and Charlotte, but I'm surprised that they couldn't even see through. And his girlfriend, Annalise, she doesn't even appear to be able to see through his
No,
knowledge.
she doesn't know. He put on a mask for her. He has no idea, because when she left, he was like, "I'm going to stay in here and pray some more." As soon as she left, he had the little shoebox full of alcohol.
Look, Annalise
was
ain't
like-
loyal either. Look, when Sam was getting baptized, she had the jugs out. I'm like, how you baptize somebody with your breast exposed like that?
She had another plan. But if you
Yes.
don't know that man is an alcoholic, there's something wrong with your nose, because you can't drink that much. And I mean, it comes through your pores, everything. So, you know, so let's put a question mark with her too, because, you know, they both had game. They both had game, and she wanted one thing, he wanted another. So yeah, you know, I can give Wendy a pass for some things.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, for some things. Listen, not everything. Look,
Right.
This is not a Team Wendy thing. I'm just saying some humanity. I can see justify some things. I can see the situation with her dad, but that doesn't mean that Wendy isn't trash. I'm not Team Wendy over here.
So I guess the other major developments in this episode was Ruth got her record expunged officially. And then the sheriff also told her about this guy who they had arrested for Wyatt's murder. His name was Timothy, which Ruth already knows that he didn't do it. But she goes to visit him in jail anyways, and, you know, talks about him. They realize that, you know, he knew some of her relatives and that they might have even had a lot in common. So I think she did that to like try to see if she could go through with letting him go down for Wyatt's murder. Which, you know, we know later on she couldn't go through with it. So we'll talk about that when we get there.
Interesting. She said, "You guilty of something. You did something."
I was like, when I saw that, I was like, now Ruth, now you know that's how everybody treats the Langmores, and you doing the same thing.
Yeah. So if we move into episode 13, this one was titled Mud. So in episode 13, it opens, Ruth is out here making big plans. She's trying to get her new house built. She's got, you know, a whole design laid out, got the workers already coming through, breaking grounds. And so I was like, okay, Ruth has really rolled into her new lifestyle very nicely. She's got a clean record. She's got all of these assets, all of this money. And so it looks like it's just like everything is going well for her, which was, you know, I always say this with every show. when stuff is going too well, it's usually not a good sign.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that too
Mhm.
in a minute. But she does take the majority stake in the casino. And episode 13, she is packing Marty up. Like,
loved
I
it.
was surprised she treated him like that, because no matter what has happened, Marty has always been kind and kind of gentle with her. But I know she's upset, but to do him like that, I was like, dang, Ruth, that's cold.
You know what I think it was? I think because that judge told her, she told that judge that if she got a second chance, she
Yeah.
was like, I'm going to be clean. And I think when he said, you know, I need to launder this through the casino, you know, for she was like, you got to find someplace else. Like, this was her chance. She was going to be the first clean Langmore. And she got her record expunged. And I think she just was like, you're not, this is my chance to start over.
And the
besides-
other thing, go ahead. No, I was gonna say the other thing that, you know, he hasn't been able to effectively protect her against Wendy either. Like, so even though a lot of stuff has happened, Marty wasn't on board, but he couldn't stop it. You know, he couldn't protect her from Wendy. So it's like, if that's your wife and we're gonna treat you as a team, then I got to go against the team.
And in fact, let me just piggyback on that, because what I started to say is Marty is just a casualty of war, because she was warring with Wendy, and Marty just happens to be a casualty of war. That's all.
Yeah, and she was like, y'all have options. It's not like you can't use this foundation. And so it's like Marty is so much of a people pleaser that he's trying to appease Wendy too, because Wendy's like, nope, you're not using my fundraiser because I want this to be clean as well. So he's tied up on both ends. And you know, meanwhile, you know, Navarro is not having it. He's like, you need to launder more money to keep my men happy, give them their gratuity fee.
Gratuities, wow.
Right, you know, a little appreciation check.
I mean, that's okay.
I mean, it is what it
Who
is.
says crime doesn't pay?
In this case, it did.
It sure did.
And so it's kind of like this back and forth of Marty trying to figure out how to rob Peter to pay Paul. He's like going back and forth trying to arrange things. And, you know, Wendy, on the other hand, is trying to check herself into the mental facility, and they turning her away because they full. I don't know why that cracked me up so much, but it did.
I loved it when she was like, she was just too out of it to even fill out the paperwork. And the lady was like, you're not the only one here. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, she even tried to offer her dad $2 million to get the kids back, to which he wasn't having it.
He
and,
thought
you know,
about it though.
Yeah, he thought about it, but he'd rather see her suffer.
That's
Exactly.
Take that money.
and
Yeah.
that was the most hateful part about him.
Yeah,
Why he wanted to see his daughter suffer and break her down to zero.
because he felt like one of the things he said to her was, you know, you embarrassed me by her behavior when they were young. Because, you know, he was real self-righteous and pompous. And I think whatever behavior, like he said, she had a reputation and all that stuff when she was young, he was embarrassed by it, and he wanted to do her the same way that she supposedly embarrassed him.
Yeah, it was interesting this episode because Marty even went to the kids and he was trying to tell them, like, your grandpa's not who you think he is. Like, he was really pleading with them. And then Charlotte even questioned him back. He's like, would you know, I know you're doing all of this for mom, but would you even be with her if, you know, if we all got out of this clean, like, would you still stay? And I mean, it was a good question because I wouldn't stay with Wendy if we got out clean. But you know, Marty said he would, and I think he said that for the kids to try to get them to come back around to staying, but to no avail.
makes me think Marty has some childhood issues too. He has some codependency issues too, because you know, it's one thing to be like, this is our family unit, nothing can break us apart. But when your partner is consistently doing things that put your life in danger, that jeopardizes the family, your well-being, you have to look at her and just like, okay, this is not healthy. So I'm looking at Marty's side-eye too. Like he needs to go check himself in as well. It should just be
They should be sitting side by side in that
exactly.
The whole family probably should go after this ordeal. The whole family probably need to be
they're gonna need
some extensive therapy.
Yeah, I mean, even though Wendy is dealing with losing her kids, she still had it in her to go and threaten Rachel at the casino. And when Rachel didn't agree, she sent Nelson. Like, dang, Wendy, it's like that.
Wendy, you know, in the other episodes when Ruth said that she was soulless and stuff, I was like, Wendy pretty is, she's ruthless.
Well, this episode, Rachel read her too. She called her ruthless and indecent.
Sure did.
I was like, God.
I was like, read her for filth.
And that's why Navarro liked her so much, because he saw the blankness in her, and he knew that he could mold that, and you know, and have her just to be whatever he wanted her to be. So you know, Navarro was very, you know, perceptive when it came to Wendy.
You know, it was funny to me. I cracked up when, you know, after Rachel said all those things about her, called her ruthless, this, that, and the other, don't have a sense of humor. The only thing Wendy said is, I do have a sense of humor. She ain't denying nothing else.
Exactly, because she know who she is.
She knows who she is.
That's true.
And Marty went to confront her about it too. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, you know, all of this is pointless if we don't have money, you know, to get Omar out of jail. And so Wendy kind of comes up with this bright idea. She suggests that the FBI knows that Omar is kind of replaceable. He's dispensable. So they think that they should get him killed and that they should give his operation up to Camilla. And so I at first thought, I was like, I don't know about that, Wendy. Because it seems like once you tell her you're working with the FBI, it could go one or two ways. Like either she's down, which she was, we know, but if she wasn't down, then she could have put her whole cartel up against them and got them off. Like, oh, we don't work with the feds.
Right, but what swayed her was the FBI protection. Like what Wendy and them offered was the FBI is going to look the other way, and you're going to be able to go international, go wherever you want without prosecution and all of that. So
you will be everything and nothing at once.
Exactly. And then they were going to turn a blind eye to it. And that's why she agreed to it. Like, I'm going to have the FBI. Wendy and Marty were delivering the FBI to them and giving her protection.
Right, because she already knew from the jump. She was like, you know, you only doing this because it benefits you. So what's in it for me? So I think they did a good job of like sweetening the deal and getting her to come around. But of course, you know, that means that Omar got to go. So,
which is very dangerous because I think this is what had my blood pressure kind of high, is the fact that you're talking to siblings. Now, yes, they have it out for each other, but it's understated. And so you're walking a very fine line about which way it was going to go. So I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out.
Yeah, me either, because when she went to the jail to visit him, she was talking about her wedding. And then I was like, well, what's the significance of this story?
That's why I knew that she was saying goodbye. Because I'm like, when she started reminiscing, I was like, oh, she like, this is the last time I'm about to see this dude.
Yeah, it was all contingent upon the fact, I know she wanted to move up, but it was also contingent on the fact that she thought he had killed her son or had her son killed. Right. And so it's, I'm wondering, did that really matter? Or it was, did it really matter? Okay.
Oh, in our last recap, we talked about that, because when Javi met with Clare and all of them, he asked Marty to bring the financials for Navarro's kids. So I was like, I believe that Javi and Camilla were planning this all along. It's just that Javi ended up, they didn't anticipate Ruth taking Javi out. I think that they were probably going to bump Navarro anyway.
And that's why
I think she did think he killed him. And so that, like, the vengeance, she had that on her side. Like, okay, now I'm really going to get him. But the fact that I was like, why is he asking to transfer Navarro's kids' financials and put it in Camilla's name? And I said, oh,
you knew this was already in the works.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was interesting because the whole time, he, and I know you covered this, that he didn't want to touch Javi out of consideration for his sister, but the sister had no consideration for him like that, which was so interesting to me. I was like, they were walking this fine line and really guessing to see how that was going to go.
Mhm.
Because
He also knew.
dealing with people that's willing to kill their siblings,
But-
you can't
but-
trust.
But Navarro had to have had some idea of who, what his sister was, and because even though she was saying goodbye or by speaking in past tense, because once she did that, he knew exactly what his fate was.
Yeah.
So with that being said, it had to have come to mind at some point with him that there's more to my sister than she just being my sister. She wants my reign, because
So
I say that he knew that. It's just interesting that I guess for the love of his sister, he's going to always give her the benefit of the doubt. But the fact that he knew his nephew could come and kill him at any point, he knew that. So
He knew that.
you would think that he would have put two and two together at some point and say, okay, I got to check my sister.
Oh, he did.
listen, that's why he immediately started explaining to her. He said, I did not kill Javi. He was not a traitor. Like
Right.
he immediately tried to set the record straight. Like, let me let you know. Like, I know that's what you're thinking, but I didn't do it.
And that meant nothing to her.
None.
Well, you know what though? It did say, because after that set her on that's what she called Marty. She immediately called Marty and was like, listen, I just met with my brother. He said he didn't do it. So I need you to tell me. Remember, she started following up with everybody. Like,
She
I
did.
need you to tell me
But
what
she
happened
didn't
to my
stop.
son.
But she didn't stop what was about to happen.
Exactly.
No, she didn't. No, she didn't.
She didn't cancel the motion that was already
she
set in place.
She didn't intervene. She was like, no, because I still want that power.
I was about to say that
I
number
still
one
want
spot
that
is
power. I
calling.
intervene
Right.
because, it's my time.
Yeah. And so I was thinking too, because like the priest came back to talk to Marty. He was like, look, Omar wants to see you. And so that's how I knew, like, that's when I started getting the hint that, okay, Omar knows something is up. Like, he knows his sister well enough. And so outside of that, the other big thing that happened in this episode was Nelson was following Ruth's truck, and she had stopped by the sheriff's to basically confess that Timothy did not kill Wyatt, and she basically laid it all out for the sheriff. Like, look, he didn't do this. You need to get him out however you can. Like, do your sheriff job, and just know that if you try to, rat on me, I'm gonna deny it all.
Mhm.
That's
she
what
knew-
called buying time. So she knew exactly what she was doing when she walked in there, and
Yeah.
she knew how to protect herself by saying it. So by saying, if you try to tell anybody, I'll deny it all. She was just buying time, and so I tell you, Ruth is just. I mean, wow.
But she
No
could
matter
do
what-
that
Nelson-
because she already had an existing relationship with that sheriff. And like I said, Ruth goes in there, lays it all out for the sheriff. And I think she can do that because they have an existing relationship. Like, they know each other from before. And so she can go up in there and say, like, tell him the full truth about the cartel, all of that. And she even told him the truth about what happened to Sheriff Nix. She just laid it all on the line, but she made sure to tell him, like, look, you better not tell nobody that I'm up to this, that I killed Javi, because I'm gonna deny it all, and you just gonna look crazy.
Well,
And
he's not playing with a full deck anyway. I mean,
Yeah, Barney Fife. But I feel like she also was getting that off her chest because she know her life was on the line. And the fact that Nelson was following her, and she knows who Nelson is and what he does, and that's why I think she made that detour to the police station too. Like, okay, I'm gonna go up in here, and I'm
For her,
huh?
I thought it was over for her right then and there. I was like,
I was like, Lord, I was like, yeah, she let him follow her to the police station and
That was
stuff.
smart.
And then, of course, when she came out and saw that he was gone,
it's only one place he could have went.
yeah, she put two and two together.
You're like, look, Rachel, you better get up out of there. Get the shotgun, go on the roof. When you
Forget your shoes. Forget your shoes. Just
Get your shoes. She's like, my shoes, you better get up out of there. I was proud of Rachel though. Rachel,
I tell you, man, they're some sharp shooters.
hey,
She got on the roof. She got on the roof and did what she had to do.
did what she had to do. I wasn't mad at all. I was like, that is for Ben.
That's for being, that's for karma, but that's for always catching other people off guard. He got caught off guard this time.
Exactly. I was like, good for him. Because he was always the Grim Reaper. So, now it's your turn.
And you know what they say about karma.
Yep.
always comes back around.
So I wasn't mad at all. But that's the thing though, with Nelson being gone. I mean, that was one of the ways that Omar thought that Camilla was involved too, because Nelson turned up missing.
Yeah. And so I think too, the other big thing that happened at the end of the episode, we talked about Wendy trying to check into the mental facility at first and getting turned away. After talking to the priest, he kind of gave her the bright idea, like, oh, I'm gonna just threaten to kill my dad. So she rose back up there and said, look, if you don't admit me, I'm gonna leave here and kill my father. Now deal with that. So Wendy is admitted by the end of the episode. And so we go into the big finale, episode 14.
Before we go there, we gotta touch upon the fact that Wendy and Ruth had that conversation, because they're in 14, I thought it was still 13 when she came. Oh, okay. Okay.
We can get into
okay, now all right.
Yeah, because that's a big one. But yeah, this episode 14, so good. So I think this is one of the best finales I've seen in a long time. One that I was
in fact, I can say it is the best finale. I cannot remember one better than this.
I'm torn though.
Well, I meant for when you say the writing, for instance, like Tiffany being upset with Power, and the writing that that they put in Ghost's mouth before he met his demise. The writing in this show was just superb, right up to the final the final 2 minutes or minute of the show. Everything was just set so perfectly, even the end, and we'll get to that. But
this was a solid finale. Solid.
I couldn't see any flaws in this episode. Help me out if you saw any, but I just couldn't see any.
I was really trying to figure out how they were going to cram all of these loose ends into one episode, and I think they did a great job tying every loose end up. So the episode opened with Ruth burying Nelson underneath where her pool was about to go. And so, like you said, Camilla has been running around asking everybody, where were you the night that Javi died? What happened? So of course she's putting the pressure on Marty to open up and talking about the logistics of this deal that they're going to make with the FBI. And she demands a face-to-face with them because, that's what they do. She has to make sure that it's legit. And of course, Marty already knew she would say that. He had it already set, ready to go. And so the other part that happened was Ruth, like you said, went to go and visit Wendy because Wendy basically told Marty, I'm not leaving this facility until I get my kids back. And so he was tasked in the first half of this finale with getting the kids back. And I was glad Marty offloaded some of the responsibility because he is under the gun from Camilla. He did not need to have that on his plate as well. And I think it was kind of unfair of Wendy to put all that responsibility on him, because I was thinking, like, did she check herself in the mental facility to escape the responsibility of all that they had going on with the cartel? Or did she really do it because she was feeling like stressed out or mentally unwell?
She did it at first to make the kids feel guilty, because she told Marty that, tell the kids that. But while she was there, she did become accountable for some things. Like she did have some realizations and stuff while she was there. Yeah,
because I was like, it's still manipulative at the end of the day.
Oh, it's manipulative.
That's why I'm pissed back off with her again.
Right, but she did end up becoming accountable for some things. I appreciate it, we'll get to that. I appreciated the conversation that she had with Ruth when she came there and stuff, and even with the kids eventually.
Right, because let's talk about all that led us there. So Marty offloads the task to Ruth. Ruth confronts that grandpa with the gun. She wasn't playing with him. And I love how Ruth, she operates, like she knows how to get somebody to tell the truth. And she came off at first to Wendy's father like she was playing into his nonsense. Like, oh yeah, I know that every time my father beat me, it was my fault, and she was just like playing along with his, foolishness. But eventually she cut to the chase and was like, I know you don't give a damn about these kids and you need to let them go. And of course, we know Wendy's father, he is just vindictive. He wasn't about to just let that slide, which I was kind of, I don't know. I wondered if the kids would actually, even if they knew the truth about their grandpa, if they would still stay.
Well, she made him tell them, and that's why they end up going to the thing to see Wendy.
Right.
Ruth had come to a realization about the father, because when he made that comment about you're not the type of woman that Ben would normally date, he was just like, well, what did you guys talk about besides the physical? Like he was just like, yeah, he usually dated brunettes and these blondes. Like he was a trip.
But
he's got a blonde. He's got a blonde himself.
Yeah.
So he's with a blonde, and then he's going to talk about what his son doesn't like. I'm like, oh, okay, that's.
But he was also drunk and discarding a whole bunch of bottles. So it was clear what kind of person he was and where that was coming from. That
right.
He had two personas.
And Ruth knows the sound of empty liquor bottles. So she knew exactly what was in that bag. Yeah, he's a trip.
So the kids eventually did decide, like, okay, we're gonna go and give mom a second chance. So they went in and they heard her out. And I was glad Wendy took accountability for Ben's death, because she had been playing it off and acting like he was still alive and manipulating it to her advantage with her foundation, which was straight up shameful from the jump. So I'm glad she took accountability and admitted to the kids that it was her own selfishness that drove her decision to keep Ben in town, and the fact that she wanted to make Marty mad.
Well, she had to because Ruth, let's talk about how Ruth got there in the first place. Marty told him, like, look, if you help us get these kids back, I'm gonna tell Camilla that you the one killed Javi.
Right.
So she had to participate. And then once she got there, once she had the conversation with Wendy, she pretty much was like, I see your father is, a piece of ish. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry that you had a father like that. And Wendy took accountability with Ruth. She was like, I'm sorry for your father too, which was cool. I was like, good. She finally acknowledged Ruth in that moment. And Ruth told her, like, listen, I can get the kids here, but once they come here, it's up to you.
Yep.
You gotta do the work, pretty much is what she said.
Yeah, because I can't force these kids to love you again and want to trust and be around you. Like, that's all I want to use this.
Right, which is what led Wendy to come correct in her conversation with the kids. That conversation, because Ruth put on her, like, the onus is on you to do the work. So I did appreciate that Wendy was like, hey, Ruth was wrong about one thing. She said that if he had stayed here, he wouldn't have died. And she was like, nah, but that's actually not true, which is something that I had said before. I do think that regardless of whether he was in there or not, because of the cartel and their reach and everything, he would have been a loose end. I think that they would have killed Ben regardless.
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing I was thinking too, and initially I said that the episode was flawless, but I began to think, once you realize that the cartel is on your back, you would think you'd carry a piece or something. And then I thought, well, she threw one gun into the lake, and then she had another gun that she used to threaten Wendy's dad. And where'd she get that gun from? And if she had
it was in the safe. It was in the safe at the Lazy O.
That's true. Now, if that's the case, why does she need the gun from Frank in the first place? So here's my thought. Why then, you know, even though the threat hadn't materialized, if I had any inclination that cartel is coming after me, I'm going to carry a piece. I'm going to have one with me.
To address, I think the Lazy O gun might be registered because she
Right, that's what I was gonna say too.
Frank
It was
Jr.
registered
for
to
a
her.
clean gun.
And
Registered
Frank,
or not.
yeah, he gave her a clean gun.
Yeah, registered or not. I hope, well, if it's registered to her, you know, you're protecting yourself, and that's even more the case. It was just interesting to have those two scenes carry out, because you knew how to, you know, use it. You certainly.
Why not trace back to you? But
No, I meant for Javier, for Javier. Yeah, that's exactly, because that's just plain out murder. But for the, you know, for Camilla, and you knowing that Nelson was coming after you, look, you got to know that you have to protect yourself at some point, because they're coming after you.
And well, look, even in Ruth's trailer, them shotguns was always in arm's reach because Rachel had one right on deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's what I say about that. But to speak back to the conversation with Wendy and Ruth, I was glad that they got to have that conversation, because in the moment they seen each other. And I think they both realized that they were victims of their parents or their fathers at least.
And that was probably the moment that Wendy had some sense of compassion for Ruth.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was interesting because she'd always kind of looked down on Ruth.
Right.
But they had very similar upbringings. Now, it was still a class issue, but it was not as big a leap as Wendy would have you believe, the way
right.
Mhm.
Right. And then I think she probably came, you know, spending time there and recognizing that her brother stayed there. And because remember, Ruth asked her, like, how bad is it? She was like, bad. And that probably gave her some empathy, you know, thinking about Ben
Yeah.
as well.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know, everybody's back on track. They get in the car. They listening to Sam Cooke. Seems like everything is going well. And we finally get to see what happens when the car flipped over. And so I think early on, I was thinking that it was like cartel related, like somebody's trying to come after them. But it was just Marty not paying attention to the road, and they really just lost control of the wheel.
Well, actually, the truck driver veers off into their lane.
Right, but I was thinking that it was cartel related, like is that somebody
set up?
Yeah. And so it turns out that it's not. But when they get back to the house, the priest is there, like Omar wants to meet, and he sends Wendy a message because she tells him about the accident, and he's like, you know, you guys are always surrounded by death. And he was like, you should take this accident as like a warning, that God is trying to basically, like, he's pointing at you, telling you to pay attention.
Pelting you, yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, no, I took that as his assurance that we're going to make it out.
Out of this thing.
Only Wendy.
Wendy is a trip, man.
Yes, she is.
I thought she was a goner.
I thought she was too.
I did, yeah. When everybody climbed out of the car except for her, I was like, this is it for Wendy. This is how she gonna go. Because
but you know,
the episode is titled "A Hard Way to Go," so I'm like, somebody gonna go, but who is it gonna be?
Well, you know that car accident strengthened their family relationship, the bond. When they came out of that car accident, they were stronger, and I was like, they're gonna stick together now because they almost faced death.
Yeah, it's different with the petty bickering, but when you realize that, like, you really almost just died.
Yeah.
The way you interact with your relatives.
Yeah, even Jonah, like when she reached out for his hand, any other time, you know, she had been calling Jonah, phone going right to voicemail. He wasn't returning her calls, nothing. But after that accident, you know, Charlotte embraced her, you know, of course, Marty was worried, but Charlotte embraced her. And then when she reached out to Jonah, Jonah took her hand. So he realized, bottom, you know, whether you like Wendy or not, whether, you know, these are still your parents. And at the end of the day, you know, they were almost all goners.
Yeah. And so, that's a good point, because we talk more about how things ended later in the review of this episode. But the next thing that happened is Marty confirms with Ruth that she did kill Nelson. And he's like, it's all good. Like, don't worry, you'll be safe because Navarro about to be out the picture anyway. And so he goes for the visit with Omar, and Omar basically lets him know, like, I know my sister put the hit on me. And he basically gives Marty a phone number to call. And he's like, look, call this guy to take care of my sister. So they both have hits on each other at this point. And so then from there, they go to the FBI deal, which, Ruth and Rachel are given their immunity deal where they can be free from prosecution, but Camilla gets a verbal deal. And I thought it was so funny, the funeral director, Harry, he was in there, like, everybody just straight up ignoring him and walking past him on the way into the meeting. And then Ruth shows up, and the comments she made, he was like, this is a colorful group. So yeah, it was funny. They had some good commentary in this episode that could add a little humor.
Yeah,
I like the way Ruth, go ahead.
I think we're gonna say the same thing. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The way Ruth went in and stood up for Rachel and demanded an
Yes,
apology, which they gave quickly.
yes, and they should have.
Yeah, because that agent did get her hooked, and Rachel was very humble about it. She didn't seem like she was the one demanding it, but I appreciate Ruth for going in there and doing what needs to be done. Like, she stands up for her people.
She's a soldier.
Yeah. So Wendy basically sees Sam leaving for North Carolina. We know he's getting ready to go and leave with the church group. And then she gives her father the donation to Ben's search efforts, which we know that he knows Ben is already dead, but it's basically like her parting gift to him. Say, like, it's a stipend attached to this, do what you need to do. Which, if I was Wendy, I wouldn't have gave him a thing after what he did.
No, but she said, you don't get to hurt me though. But she was like, you can get, you can pretend to be whoever you want to be in your church, and now you're going to have prominence and money and stuff. But what you're not going to do, you don't get to hurt me.
I wouldn't have even gave him that. That was incredibly hurtful. And if those kids had decided to go with him, who knows what he would have done.
Yeah.
I think it was a payoff. I think it was a payoff and to make him complicit.
It was a payoff.
Yeah.
It was, because she said it was a stipend.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's dirty money.
It's dirty money. So that's what I think she was doing to him. She was making him complicit. So she would get, it's still all about control with her. And so in her mind, she wins.
Mm-hmm.
And
then she ain't gonna have no dealings with him no more either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we get to this gala that's being thrown at the casino. And, Wendy is on her high horse going into it. Jim has just let her know that big money is in the house. All of the donors are in. Her competitor is basically out and nobody wants to roll with him. So Wendy goes downstairs to Schaefer and she like, look, I'm pulling your voting machines.
She's like, we already told him in Michigan and want this cousin.
I'll save you the embarrassment. You ain't gonna win. I'm pulling your voting machines.
She couldn't help herself. I'm like, granted, she felt like she had everything she wanted in her hand, but it's almost like she still hadn't learned to just let it go through. She still almost had to gloat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like the kids were sitting there talking about like the life after everything is over. I was sitting here like, oh, I don't think they're gonna make it. I was like, if something's gonna happen, and I just knew it. Like, I could feel the tension building.
You could, because things were going too well.
Everything was going perfectly. Like, they were smiling and cheesing on their high horse. They got all this money and donors. The foundation's doing good. They got the plan for Navarro. Like, I was like, something bad about to happen. Like, you can feel it. So,
okay, I'll save it to the end, because what I thought was gonna happen is I felt like if Marty used that call to Chicago, it wasn't gonna be for Camilla, it was gonna be for them. That's what I was thinking. That was floating around in my head too. That was gonna be a double cross.
That's what I thought too as well. Because I was like, I think Omar's onto them for some reason. Like, I kind of felt like maybe Omar and Camilla were working together to get Marty and Wendy out of there because they knew that they had lied. So I was kind of like, dang. it could go either way with that phone call to Chicago, which it turned out they was thinking about it because when Camilla popped up at the gala and Claire showed up too, I'm like, oh, this can't be good. Which let's just kick this off by saying Claire, I think she gotta get not only
She gotta get the hands. She gotta get the hands.
She can get jumped, she can get stomped out.
Absolutely. I was so angry. I wanted to come through the TV. I was just like, snitches get stitches. Like, shut your mouth.
You need to get the shovel.
Everybody was keeping quiet. Even Wendy, like even with all the beef that Wendy and Ruth had, Wendy was still not gonna dime on Ruth.
Right. And I was like, nobody else knows about this except for y'all. So if everybody can do their part and keep their mouth shut, she'll never figure it out. She doesn't have anybody else to go to. And it's always the weakest link.
You don't even have a body. You don't even have a body to get to. So, you know, like you said, the only people that would have known are the very people in that room, other than Camille. So
she was a punk. No, I said she was a punk. Claire was a punk. She was like.
But you got to give it to Camilla. I mean, because.
Camilla is scary.
Threatening. Yeah, she is.
The way she put it to Claire about what will happen to you if I find out.
Oh, she was scary.
You saw that lump. You saw that lump in her throat. I mean, it was like. Okay.
Claire said, "I ain't signed up for this." She said, "I just got a pharmaceutical firm."
Right. You know, Claire did cover for Marty and Wendy, but I still wasn't forgiving her.
No,
you know, still like she should have kept her mouth shut. And so you can see that, like, once Camilla started calling the server over and was like, "You see that blonde over there?" And you could just see it in Marty and Wendy's face, like they wanted to do something so bad. And Camilla was like, "If you even look in her direction, you see those kids?
You see them kids, right?" Yeah. I was like, "Oh no!" I was like, "No!"
So I was like, I was really hoping that there was something that they could do, because all of these seasons we have seen Marty and Wendy come up with a plan to get their way. Wendy
was talking about it though. Wendy was trying. She was like, "Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that?" And he said any of those would be suicide. Yeah. And for once, like, remember, she accused him of never putting the family first.
Right.
Marty put the family first.
Right.
This time.
Well, and also she finally listened to what Marty had to say. You know, without going left on him. So
we know how much his relationship with Ruth meant to him. Like, you could see that it was killing him inside.
He was looking at Claire. He was heated. He looked at her.
Yeah. And so, and even as like he and Wendy were at the gala, like they were talking to each other and trying to like look at each other so that they could focus on not trying to look for Ruth.
Yeah.
And so it was like, you could just feel like their heartbreak and devastation. And even as like the guy was on stage, like announcing them to come up, like this is their big moment, and they're in front of this giant crowd, and their faces, like when they first came to the gala, they were bright and shining and vibrant. Yeah. Then once they got up on that stage, they just looked so dead and lackluster. I was like, damn, this is terrible.
Yeah. You know, when they were dancing, one of the things that, you know, when they were talking to each other, Wendy said, you know, is this going to be, will we be able to bear this? And even though I know that she was talking about them, you know, they love Ruth, but those kids love Ruth.
I said, how they going to tell the kids?
Because
the same, you know, what it made me think is what Wendy getting what she she has sacrificed so many people, because the last event was the whole blow up with Ben, which led to him being killed. And it was almost like nothing could stop her from getting what she wanted. There was no obstacle. There was no one she was willing to save or sacrifice. So I hated to see the end, but it was like, how could you not stop it? She really didn't care. You know what I mean? So it was like for her to have this, I don't know, like at the end, not really want to see any harm come to Ruth. It was almost too late, because it never mattered to her before.
Well, I think she, for the first time, actually recognized.
When they had that convo at the that was
No,
kind of
no,
made her
no,
feel-
that's not where I was headed. I was headed to say, I think for the first time, she honestly understood where they are with the cartel.
Mhm.
Because like we all agree, she came around to understand Ruth in a certain, the weapons were put down between the two of them. And it looked like they could call a truce. And here we are now with Camilla wanting to take out Ruth, and Wendy knowing that that's exactly what's going to happen.
And
And
all of most of that Wendy set in motion.
Yeah, and all of that. And so what you saw, that was the actual first time I really saw the compassion and the fight.
She looked horrified. I don't think she definitely looked like she didn't want that to happen to Ruth.
No, because she knew that she knew that they were just 2 ticks away from the same thing. See, that's the thing. When you realize that she can take Ruth out like that, you're just a tick or 2 away for her
I think
taking
that's
you
what
out.
Marty had been trying to communicate to her.
All along.
Exactly.
All along.
My thought was their plan was to call the hitman, but I was like, it would be an even better plan if you have leverage with the FBI, and Ruth is also in this deal with the FBI. Couldn't you call them to intervene? You know, you can't call Ruth. You can't.
Well, she said that.
But you can make a phone call
She
and
did
say
say that.
I know she told them not to try to intervene, but I think I would have at least tried, because if Camilla was there and present for that deal, and she knows that they also made a deal with Ruth to launder that money. And so the FBI has an interest in protecting Ruth.
But Wendy suggested that.
Alive. Not as long as Rachel is alive, because they still have,
exactly.
She's the oldest, they still have a way in.
They still have a way.
But
Wendy
doesn't know the ropes around that casino like Ruth does. Like, she's their number one asset in that regard.
Yeah,
but Wendy suggested calling FBI. Marty was the one that shut it down and was like, no, either way, it'll be suicide.
Right. And remember, if Camilla saw them on the phone talking to Santa Claus, they would have taken out.
They got AirPods these days. You could be on a conversation and nobody even know.
But that I'm saying, if you're like this, Camille,
I got my AirPods and I could be talking, looking straight in your face, just like this, having a conversation with the FBI.
Yeah, but you gotta still do
Also,
it.
went to the trailer park and checking.
But listen, I'll say this: Ruth is my girl. You know, I loved her just as much as I loved the Marty character. But she had opportunities as well, because Rachel said to her earlier in the day, like, why don't you leave? Didn't you kill a cartel dude? What? Like, you got money and access now. You could disappear. And she was like, no, you know, Marty told me that Navarro is going to be gone. So he's not, she thought he wasn't going to be an issue anymore. So she thought she was safe.
He wasn't an issue, but she didn't know that Camilla was going to find out. That was the thing.
But still, well, that's what I'm saying. With that, knowing what she did, there was a couple times, like, you know, I feel like with Wyatt and Ruth, like she had said earlier, she tried to get Wyatt to leave and he said no. Had both of them gone, both of them would be alive.
Right. And I was thinking about, like, Ruth, I think she wanted to stay too, to clean up her family legacy. Like, that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
She really could have just up and gone and started a life somewhere else, but she also had 3. So she got to look after him. Now he's the last.
3, she had means. You could take 3 with her.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I just think she had a lot to lose, and she, like you said, she loved the Ozarks. She wanted to stay there and clean up her family name. You know, I think we talked about it and a little earlier about Netflix and, you know, the troubles that they're in terms of losing audiences and things like that, and now losing Ozark. But if they wanted to make an episode 5 and hear this
Season 5.
I mean, season 5, they have the means, because we now know that Navarro wasn't taken out at all.
Yes, he was.
He was taken out.
No, that's right. He was taken out. I'm sorry.
Yes, he was.
He was taken out. Okay, so
they played him that guard.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Guard did the guard.
And for a second, we thought he was gonna get away.
Exactly. So the
That
guard.
What they said.
That's
It was-
sort of an unusual punishment.
Yeah, but then we got to get.
scenario.
But then we got to get to Mel, because I was going to draw those two.
Okay, hold on.
I was
Let's
going to
not
draw
get
those two,
Mel
but I'm not
yet.
going to draw it now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to draw it now. But what I'm saying with Netflix, I would seriously consider doing a season 5.
Okay, I want to jump back to Ruth though, because
Right.
once she got out of the casino and she said her goodbyes to Rachel, she goes back down to her house and she sees the car sitting there at the end of the driveway. And so I'm like, you know that truck, you know
Yeah.
that truck means trouble. If you don't turn around and head back to safety,
Mhm.
and I just kept pleading with, like, I was literally yelling at my TV, like, turn around, please.
Back up.
And she got out that car, and I really thought that as soon as she walked up to the window, somebody was gonna be right there with a gun to shoot her.
She got out the car unarmed, and it's not just about her being in trouble. I thought she was one that always carried something on her.
Me too.
Always had a weapon on her.
That was my whole point. I don't understand. You know the deal. You know the car, and you get out of your truck unarmed, as
Yeah.
if to say nothing's going to happen to me.
I think she was tired though. That tells me that you're tired and you don't want to run anymore.
And thank you. When she got home, I thought she was already, when she saw the truck, she was resolved. That's what I got from it. She was resolved, because she even said to, when she walked up, she was just like, who told you?
Right.
Who told you? And then when Camilla hesitated,
Yeah,
she was like,
she's like, are you gonna do it or are you not?
yeah,
Like,
she was typical Ruth.
So do you think?
Ruth went out like a G.
Like a G.
So
like a
you,
G.
when you said she's
And she was
resolved,
listening. I knew something bad was gonna happen when she was listening to Reminisce in the car when I reminisced. So I was like, and then earlier in the episode, she had been, reminiscing with her family, fantasizing about them and they little cookout. I was like, oh, something bad about to happen.
Listen, that's
let me ask you a question. When you said resolved in her death, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, whatever happens, happens.
It was gonna happen. Yeah, she was like, whatever happens, happens. Yeah,
Because
she was
you gotta
resolved.
know that if you see that truck in your driveway, that means she knows.
She was
it's like,
resolved.
there's no outrunning that.
Right. She was just like,
That's
Your
just
time
more,
is-
that's
and
more body. Look,
No, I would- yeah.
I mean, I would have tried too. I would have backed
I would've
right
tried
up
too.
and made a U-turn. But
I
I
had to
think,
shoot my tires out. I would have
Yeah.
gone out.
I hope
I
you can
think at
drive.
that point she was like, I can make a U-turn now, but they still gonna be after me tomorrow and the next day and the next day.
The next day, right. She just, well, like you said here, when I saw her reminiscing about the family and they were all there and stuff, and it was good to see all of them from season 1 and 2. I thought, I've read books about, hospice and stuff, and they say a lot of times when people are getting ready to die, that they see people from their past and stuff, they start, thinking about people from their past. And when I saw that, I was like, ooh, I hope this doesn't mean what I think it means. But to me, I felt like death was imminent when I saw that.
Yeah, it was sad to see her get shot. And I was like,
I was hurt.
Like, it's so many people in this series that don't deserve to have survived. And I'm like, why couldn't Ruth get her chance?
I know.
That's what I said. I'm gonna have an issue with that.
A lot of people have an issue with that because I wanted her to survive too. I was like, man, she got clean, she got money, she's young. I wanted her to ride off into, if anybody deserved to ride off into the sunset, it should have been Ruth.
Yeah, I was hoping that 3 was gonna come out the trailer with a shotgun.
That's what I was hoping.
Because
I heard that would have been gangster.
That would have been the bomb if that happened like that.
I don't know.
That's
like I say,
the other way that I think that this episode could have been better is if 3 showed up with the shotgun and shot Camilla. I
would have carried something with me, and it would have been like the Wild Wild West. Who's the fastest draw? And I know that killing her may bring somebody else. Look, give me days. If
But I
got
don't
days,
know.
Who's going to come after Camilla?
Yeah.
Because at that point, we said Navarro was
well, that's true too. And then they were going to kill her anyways. Yeah.
And so then who would come? Because the rest of the cartel, I think, especially after them not receiving their gratuity check, I think they're going to be like, to hell with them.
Listen, everybody, they always have a leader. They always have,
Somebody to step up.
Yeah, there's always somebody next.
But remember, Paul was going to take her out anyways. So he had already given Marty the number to take her out. So anyone could have taken her out,
That's
and
what I
that'd
was
have been just,
thinking. I was thinking, but I'm like, the deal would have fell apart because Marty and them could have done that. He could have known what was going to happen to Varro. He could have also made the call to Chicago to take out Camilla. And I was thinking, where would that have left them?
There's no deal with the FBI, and there's also no ties to the cartel. So you could have Camilla and Omar take each other out, and then you and Wendy are just left standing. And
so Marty would have to go back to Mexico.
Yeah, because the other part of it was that FBI wanted the money. So a lot of that deal was contingent upon them continuing to get the seizures.
Right.
Well, I would have just had to be working for the FBI.
Hey, look, take residence in Mexico. Give me another day. I can understand your resolve and saying, hey, let's get it over with, but it'd have been the OK Corral with me. Whoever's the fastest draw.
I would have been a whistleblower, like, look at what the FBI is trying to make me do. But
yeah, that was heartbreaking though. That was heartbreaking.
I did not want to see that.
And I was, like I said, I wish 3 would have came out similar to how Jonah did. So
yeah,
to the end of the gala, everybody's returning back home, and Marty and Wendy are sitting there in the house. You can see the window is busted out. Lo and behold, it's Mel. He has come back, and he is saying that he could not go through with his job in Chicago because all he could think about was them. And he has basically gone and stolen Ben's ashes. He couldn't figure out why a child was carrying the empty cookie jar, and figured that was the key to figuring out what was going on with Ben. He goes to the crematorium, finds big chunks of Ben's remains and whatnot. So he has the smoking gun here. And he is basically threatening to out them. Marty and Wendy try to pay him off as usual to no avail.
Yeah, he thought he had the smoking gun.
Yeah.
Jonah had the smoking gun.
He had the smoking gun.
And I was like, come through, Jonah. He redeemed himself. We hated him for so much of season 3, early on.
In this season too, early part of this season, we were mad at him. And this is what I was gonna say when I thought about this. During Ozark, there was so many comparisons between Jonah and Tariq from Power because they were so, unruly and wayward. However, here's the similarities. Tariq killed Ghost because he felt that Ghost was getting in his way, his future. And Jonah killed Mel because Mel was getting in the way of their future, the birds' future. They were like, we're this close to being clean, and you ain't getting in the way of that.
Right.
I mean, they didn't show it. We're making an assumption, and that's probably a good assumption, but they didn't show it. So why did they leave it up?
Because you know why they left it up? I think because Netflix, if I were Netflix, up in that echelon where I make decisions, I would have done exactly that. Because if you do come out, or if they can work a season 5, that's when you
season 5. This is it.
I know.
But they might just be I'm gonna leave the door open.
Yes. No, but you heard the shot. You heard the shot.
But you heard the shot.
Jonah
He could have shot in the air.
Well, I don't think Jonah shot in the air. I think he killed him.
Jonah killed that man.
I know. I'm saying it's because they didn't show it, we can surmise a whole bunch of things.
Jonah, because when I watched the interview with Jason Bateman, it's up to the audience interpretation, but he said he left that shot in there for a reason. And the reason is Jonah took that mama out.
Yes,
and they probably put Mel in the crematorium. And if they're smart, they go ahead and spread Ben's ashes too while they at it. In the Ozark River.
The other reason they could have left it in is for you to draw your own conclusion, as well as having something to kind of lean into should this happen. Right. Or even if there's a spin-off. And look, I know I might be, whistling down a lane that doesn't exist, but look, I'm just saying, even if there's a spin-off, I don't know.
I agree with Ron. I think they left the door open in case, because we see all of these shows getting reboots nowadays. Yeah. It don't have to be next year or the year after. It could be 5-10 years down the line, and they might decide to reboot Ozark.
You never know.
I thought about that. I thought about that. The reboot may be that you see Jonah and Charlotte running the Enterprise in the
That
future.
part.
Because that's definitely
Wendy and Marty could still be doing work for the FBI.
Mhm.
Because the FBI could be like, look, y'all ain't done.
Look, now they get their way though. And I think it was the message was that sometimes corrupt people do get away with it. I mean, sometimes every
that
dog
was
has their
always
day.
that was always my argument with Power of why couldn't we see ghosts win? Because if you look at the story behind a lot of affluent families, they are not clean.
Right.
Most people in this US, they started out, whether it was during Prohibition, whether it was the enslavement, trafficking in people, they're not clean. But they have gone on to lead these very prestigious, affluent lifestyles, and that history is forgotten and nobody brings it up.
Right. And that's what I think the message is here, that they get to go off scot-free. And Mel was saying it. Like he said, that was bothering me that you guys get to go out here and pretend that you're royalty and stuff and the Kennedy family. And I know you did all this dirt. And
Ruth is dead. And Ruth is dead.
And Ruth is dead.
It becomes a class thing because she's
Exactly.
considered white trash. So
yes,
she's dispensable,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I agree with that 100%. I think that was the
I was
message.
a little like, I'm happy with the ending because I love Marty's character, first of all. So I definitely want to see him come out of it clean.
Me too.
I wouldn't have been mad if Wendy had gotten killed in that car accident or something.
That's the consensus online.
I wouldn't have been mad. But the fact that they did get away and that Jonah stood tall for his family, especially after all his ill feelings towards them, I was like, okay, so that, like you said, the car accident bonded them.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I wasn't mad at the ending.
I wasn't either.
I was just like, dang, this corrupt family gets to live on top, move back to Chicago.
But the funny thing is we've seen this over and over again where people write their own tickets. If Mel had just gone back to Chicago,
he should.
The overzealous cop. It's always
Overzealous cop.
Oh, he had the
Another grade.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, he bought his death, as they say.
Yeah, he did buy his death. Like he could have been back on. He'd been pining to get back on the Chicago PD. Then you get an opportunity, and you worrying about the birds.
Yeah, Jonah said.
You sign your own death certificate. You sign your own death certificate.
I'm okay with it. Was really good, but Ruth, that's the only one. I felt
that's the only.
She had lost so much. She had lost so much because of what the birds had done.
Yes.
Exactly.
The fact that it just didn't seem justice for her to be taken out too.
No, I wanted to see her win too. So that was heartbreaking to me that she had to die. And
the only thing I can pull out of it is that now she's at peace with the rest of her family.
And Port 3.
Yeah, he just had nobody. He's an
because she would have never given up, or I don't think she would have ever gotten over the fact that her family was gone. She may have been able to tolerate it to some point, but
no, she was making plans. She was going to build that house with the pool, and then the fact that with the casino.
Have that body in the pool. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not going swimming with that body in the pool.
I do think that was bad juju to leave.
That's some real bad juju right there.
Yeah, I do too.
But at least 3. I hope she wrote a will. I hope she learned something from Wyatt and left a will for 3 to get access to her stuff.
I would make the leap that Rachel would step in to take care of 3, and he would probably inherit all of that. So.
I think that's a good leap to make. I think Rachel, because Rachel was, Rachel, once Wendy told her that the cartel was after Ruth and all that stuff, Rachel was gonna walk away from that deal. Oh, and she only came back because she got pissed at Marty because Marty ain't do right by Chuck.
Yeah. Yeah, so Rachel is a person that cares about people. And so I think she would do right by 3. So, hopefully, I really want another episode. I feel like they needed something else to show that, because I'm like, dang, like I really want to know what they're doing right now. I'm sitting up
Yeah.
here like, dang, are they back in Chicago? Is how the foundation doing? I got all these questions.
I think they are. I think they riding off into the sunset.
They
So
got
now
to
they got
do-
At the
For me,
end,
they
love
gotta
and
do a
happiness.
season
They
5 so
play-
I can see
That's
Wendy
it.
get her justice. I need to see Wendy.
Wendy
get her
ain't getting no justice unless Maya, I was thinking like Maya, who seemed like she was kind of sweet on Mel, and when she finds out that he disappeared or whatever, then she might be like, oh, everybody that goes after the birds, like, you know, that might prompt her.
And that's why we might see a season 5.
I need another season.
I mean, look, there are a lot of loose ends. We need to tie some loose ends up.
I need Wendy to get some justice.
I need her
it's
gone.
not-
To at
it's-
least be in jail.
I need her gone, and I need to see Marty walk off into the sunset with his kids. That's what I need to see.
I would
would
have
work for me.
loved to see Wendy get arrested.
I want her gone. I want a deep 6. I want a deep
But
6.
how they arrest Wendy without not arresting Marty? Because
Because he wasn't there. That's the thing. She was there. They can place her there. And because of her behavior, he can always have plausible deniability because she did go out in public that she's looking for her brother. So she looks like the liar. So it's easy for them to say she was lying to all of us.
And
I'm
had
talking about
documents
everything
that
else
he
that Marty has been complicit in.
Well, you know, Marty can go work for the FBI because, you know,
Yeah.
they still love to have his skills.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying Wendy should have been in the jail cell and Ruth should have.
So I think in my perfect ending, the way Navarro did it, he gave them, it was a setup, and that there was a bullet waiting for Wendy when she was on that stage.
Mm.
I don't know if and I wondered if when Camilla showed up at the gala, I was like, dang, could something bad go down at a public event like this? Like, would they really set it off like that on American soil?
I don't know. I mean,
Well, then we would have not had the scenario with Camilla and the ending with Ruth. I mean, the ending was a tragedy. It was a grief.
It was.
it was. I mean, I get it was well written, the drama. I understand why they did it. I don't like that they
No,
did
I don't like that they did it either.
it. I
But
just need Wendy to somehow trade places with Ruth.
Ruth, yeah, I wanted Ruth to win, and I was furious with Claire. I was furious.
Now,
I understood Claire because the whole thing about that was they pulled her in and
They
she
did.
was green. She hadn't had a chance to catch up to their ruthlessness and the
No,
like,
she
if you're gonna do this, y'all need to provide her with a story because you know Camilla is continuing to look. So they needed to give her a story.
I thought about that too. I was like, they should have prepped her more, even though Claire was holding it down on her own. She was like, I'm sorry, I let my security guy do my she did. But she, you know, she's a regular businesswoman. So she ain't used to
the weak link in that, in which Camilla might have thought about the security guy, because they could have kidnapped him, tortured him, and then he, you know, tells what really happened, and then Camilla says, "Oh, then Camilla's on the outs." So if you were actually going to do that, if she was actually going to stay quiet, they would have to take out her guard.
There's always a weak link somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah, she seen too much. She had already seen too much for her to just like. She was like, I don't know, Ruth.
and again, Wendy's fault because Wendy called Javi and had him come over there. And Marty was the one that tried to talk Ruth off the ledge the entire time. You go home, you don't want this, Yeah.
I mean, Ruth might have been the trigger man, but Wendy is the one that put all that in motion. Had she not made that phone
She called and told him to come over there.
And so Wendy is as much at fault with that death as Ruth.
So she should be glad that Claire ain't dropped their name.
Yeah.
I know I'm stretching it, but I would love to see a season 5 because I want Ruth.
But keep hope alive.
I want
keep hope alive.
I'm gonna keep it alive. I want Wendy gone.
Because there ain't gonna be a season 5. But this was a wonderful series.
Super solid.
The writing was so tight, acting and Jason Bateman also as a phenomenal director too behind the cameras.
Lenny directed some episodes too.
He did too. Laura Linney did direct the episodes too.
So
She
I
did.
mean, like
Fabulous.
phenomenal cast. Like the entire casting of this show has been solid from the beginning. The acting has been solid from the beginning. The writing has been solid from like overall. I haven't seen a show so tight like this in quite a while. And you know, there are other shows that you can name, but I think for it to be like a Netflix show, because it is like a Netflix production, I think they did an incredibly good job of bringing this incredible production together all the way around. And then, like you said, you say this a lot, Tiffany, but raising the stakes each episode, like you're constantly on the edge of your seat and bite your nails, and then they throw something in there that you weren't expecting, and it wasn't predictable. I like that.
It was not. It was not. Shout out to Chris Mundy.
Yeah, like I said earlier too, even when there were slow moments, really there was so much into those moments that you never really.
It was just building. It was just building. It was always building
to
something.
No boredom. You know, you was always thinking what's coming up next.
Yeah, storytelling at its best.
I'll put this in a category with like Breaking Bad and Sons of Anarchy. Those were other really good series that I thought always raised the stakes and kind of kept you on the edge.
Yes.
But I do think the writing was superb. I think
superb.
Yeah.
So congratulations to all involved, the cast, the crew, the writers, the directors. Phenomenal 4 seasons. We will not be mad, as Ron has said so many times, if y'all came back for another season. So consider it. But just, you know, congratulations to everybody in the crew. Phenomenal job. I mean, I'm sad to see it go.
Me too.
Yeah, very sad to see it go. Do you guys have any other parting words?
Hashtag season 5.
All right, well, everyone, thank you so much for watching. We were so happy to come and recap this last 4 episodes of this season. Please drop down into the comment section and give us your thoughts on the season overall. You can even give us your thoughts on the finale, and if you're happy with how it ended or not, give us your thoughts. And please make sure you subscribe to our channel, like the video, and also click the notification bell so that you get alerted whenever we post, because we are doing other recaps of a lot of shows that are coming back. And you guys have also made a lot of good suggestions on shows that you want to see us recap. So, you know, now that we got Ozark out the way, we can catch up on some of your suggestions, and hopefully we'll have some recaps of those shows coming for you too. Guys, want to add anything? Okay, well, guys, make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We are at The Spot Real Talk. And I guess make sure you are back next time for our next recap. Hit that notification bell so you know when it is. And on that note, we'll call it a night. Bye-bye.
Your heart, keep it in your pocket for safekeeping. Don't ever let nobody be the reason you throw it out. You stop caring about it. Don't let your head get in the way. Can't be defined by your mistakes. You know you try and you try really hard, but sometimes you fall. You're